Hi, I'm John Blackburn, and this is a notes episode of Entertainment Matters. These shorter episodes are inspired by conversations I've had with guests on the podcast. What I'm doing here is pulling out a few ways of thinking, decisions, attitudes, shifts in perspective that seem to have led to real outcomes. Sometimes it's something practical like a plan or a set of precise steps, and sometimes it's more about values or philosophy. But the aim is always the same, to look at how things actually get made, how ideas can help us move forward, and what we can notice about that whole process. So this is less, here's what to do, and it's more, here's something interesting, what do you think? In today's notes episode, I'm going to look at something that came up in my conversation with the fantastic Ali James. If you haven't already checked out that conversation yet, do go and have a listen. She's brilliant, and the conversation is absolutely full of great ideas that you could apply to your work creatively and in how you think about the business side of it as well. I've actually got a long list of things that I'll probably come back to in future episodes just from that one interview. And today, I want to focus on yes and. Not as an improv game, not as a warm-up, not as a tool for moving scenes along within improvised work, but as a value or a way of thinking. Most people in live entertainment will have heard of the phrase yes and, as yes, something you do on stage, a way of keeping scenes moving forwards. What struck me from listening back to that conversation with Ali is that yes and is actually doing a lot more heavy lifting than that. It's helping shape how Ali treats ideas and how she treats other people that she's working with. And this matters a lot because a lot of people in live entertainment and beyond end up playing a different game without really noticing. Often, instead of yes and, we end up playing the yes but game. Now, yes but does the opposite of yes and. Yes but stops momentum, it closes things down, and it's often done in the name of being realistic. What's often going on here is that people are trying to do two different jobs at the same time. They're trying to generate ideas or creative solutions, and at the same time, they're trying to edit and evaluate or figure out how you might make an idea work. Now, I think those two jobs probably should be kept separate. They require different attitudes, different kinds of attention, very different ways of thinking. When you try and do both at once, one of them gets shut down, and it's usually the creative bit. So when I'm talking about yes and here, I'm not talking about ignoring reality or pretending everything is possible all the time. I am talking about exploring an idea before you evaluate it, letting things develop before deciding whether they're good or bad, and not stopping something just because you can see a problem early. Yes and is, I think, about creating first, and it's not just an improv thing. Now, there are plenty of organizations that have some version of yes and sort of built into the core of how they work. For example, Pixar have something they call plussing. You're not allowed to say that doesn't work. You have to add something that makes an idea better. And they delay critique to another stage in the process. And part of the beauty of that is that it's encouraging contribution and different perspectives first before analysis. Amazon have something that they refer to as two-way door decisions. Now, this is not exactly yes and, but I think it contains the core of the yes and spirit. So an Amazon two-way door decision is they look at a situation and they analyze it into one or two groups. They say, is this a one-way door or a two-way door? A one-way door is something that once you've done it, it's very hard or expensive to reverse. And a two-way door is something basically that would be easy to reverse if it didn't work out. Now, a two-way door should be tried quickly, less debate. It lowers the perceived risk of trying things. And you can probably see, even just in that sort of quick description, the essence of yes and. Someone has an idea, we say, is it something that we could just get out there and try it? If it didn't work, would the consequences be huge? It's a two-way door, yes, and let's develop that idea. Fantastic. The one that I'm going to spend quite a bit of time talking about, which I read about years ago, but having listened to Ali speak, I can see the yes and sort of at the heart of it. is from a company, a little known company you may have heard of called Airbnb. So I first heard about this framework or sort of implementation of Yes and I think in an interview on a podcast with Brian Chesky, who was the co-founder and the CEO of Airbnb. And this story goes right back to how he helped redesign Airbnb's customer experience when the company was struggling. And they call it the 1 to 11 star experience. So in Brian Chesky's description of it, as best I can remember, you think about it like this. A 1, 2, or 3 star experience would be you show up at your Airbnb and there's no one there. You knock on the door and they don't open. Now, this is important. We might call that a 0 star experience, but let's go with his thinking for now. Maybe it gets to a 3 star if they do show up, but you have to wait for 20 minutes. A 5 star experience would be you knock on the door, they open the door and they let you in. And in that case, you might report back or you might write them some feedback or a review that said, I tried Airbnb and it worked. So that's what they're calling a 5 star experience. Let's see. So a 6 star experience would be going beyond simply doing what it said on the tin. So a 6 star experience is you arrived and there was a welcome gift. There's a bottle of wine, there's chocolate, there's bottles of water, and they've provided some nice toiletries. Then you might say, wow, this is nicer than a hotel. A 7 star experience, maybe they pick you up from the airport and bring you back to the place. 8 star, they take you on a tour of the city and then take you to the accommodation. And then from that point, it starts to get more exciting. A 9 star Airbnb experience might be that they give you a parade to welcome you to the accommodation. A 10 star experience might be a parade and a marching band, and you meet the mayor of the town. An 11 star experience is they fly in Bon Jovi to perform a concert in your honor with the marching band and the parade, and you're riding on an elephant from the airport to the accommodation. Now, why have I told you about that? Well, I think it's the yes and attitude of not how do we make this meet standard or how do we make it acceptable? I think the idea of working out, maybe we know what the 3, 4, 5 star version of the show or the project would be. We know what we need to do to meet the standard, to meet the criteria, and maybe in a few areas go beyond the standard. So perhaps we feel that our band is much better, or our costumes are better, or arrangements are better, or the lighting is better than other comparable shows or events. And it can feel like a lot of work to try and do anything that goes much beyond that. So if you ask the question, what does a 6 star experience look like for our show or our event or our project? What you'll do is probably slightly iterate, slightly improve what your thinking is for a kind of standard show. Once you get to 7 star, which we've maybe not had as much experience of before, and certainly by the time you get up to 11 stars, you're having to really get creative and you're having to really stretch your mind, your possibilities way outside of what your comfort zones are. And the point is not necessarily that you then try and hire some elephants to bring people from the car park through the foyer into the theatre, because it would be an amazing experience. The point is that once you've spent a bit of time with your brain operating at that much higher level, that much grander scheme, suddenly coming back and delivering the 6 star version of the show seems really easy. So you might decide, for example, that a 6 star version of your show or your event is that they're greeted when they arrive with a drink tailored to the show. That's something that a couple of people have mentioned to me recently as ideas they've had. And you might decide that perhaps in the run up to them attending the show, they've had some emails with costume suggestions, or even links to places where they could get costumes, or maybe there's some aspect to the show that you send them in advance. Maybe there's some videos, whether it's a welcome video from the show itself, or maybe it's, I don't know, I always think with Panto, I always think that there could be like a pre-Panto element to the story that could get sent out to people in video form, some incredible animation, or conversation between two of the cast members, two of the characters, kind of that's going to set up what you're going to see happen in the story. This idea of yes-anding, beginning with what is already a good show and yes-anding from there, yes-anding up to the 5, 6, 7-star version of the show, then go all the way up to the 11-star. And then you might find that delivering something that is 6 or 7 stars doesn't feel so unreasonable. I'm sure you can see the yes and in that process. And finally, a shorter example from nature. In bees, it has been observed that there is this process of explore and exploit. In a hive, some bees are sent to exploit, which is to go back to places where they know there are flowers, resources that they need, making the most of what's already known. That's a specific job. Other bees, a smaller group, are sent further out. They're out exploring. They don't know where they're going necessarily. They are trying to find the new. They're looking for new patches. And it's known that a lot of that activity won't pay off directly, and it's a different job. No single bee is trying to do both at once. They're not trying to both explore and exploit at the same time. They're both necessary roles though. And this feels very yes and to me. Yes, keep doing what works and make space for trying what might. All of this helps explain something I see quite a lot in live entertainment. Sometimes people see colleagues or even friends of theirs in live entertainment who they maybe feel are in some way less capable or no less, and these people are somehow doing more. And often it's not really about capacity. Sometimes I think knowledge and technical skill can sometimes get in the way. It's like the more you know, the more problems you can actually see in advance. And because you see a flaw early, you stop the idea. Exploration gets shut down before an idea's had a real chance to flourish. And I think this is a really useful thing to notice, especially if you are prone to yes-butting yourself or yes-butting other people. So to finish up, what might you discover if you started yes-anding some of your own thoughts, even just for a little bit, before later returning to edit, analyze, and work out the how something could be done? Also, who do you work with? Who do you care about? Who in your team might benefit from a little bit of yes and style encouragement? Have fun. Let me know what you come up with. If you'd like to be notified when there's a new episode, whether it's a full conversation or one of these Entertainment Matters Notes episodes, you can sign up for the Entertainment Matters Cue Sheet using the link in the description. That's where I share updates, ideas, and the occasional extra thought that doesn't quite make it into the episode. Thanks for listening, and thanks as always for whatever you do to make live entertainment happen. See you next time.